Wondering what's next in your business or personal life? Welcome to Success to Significance, Life After Breaking Through Glass Ceilings, a podcast dedicated to helping you with all of life's challenges, discoveries, and opportunities. Whether you're seeking a new career, retirement, or simply wanting to make an impact in your community or the world. Join Jen Plessis and her guests as they explore how to start, what to do when you're in the thick of a change or growth, and how to leave a mark in this world after breaking through your next achievement. You are moments away from the aha you've been seeking.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to this episode. I am so delighted to have with me today George Chanos, I got it right, who served as Nevada's 31st Attorney General. And I will tell you a little bit more about him here shortly, but thank you so much for joining us, George. It's been a whirlwind of us trying to get together, but I'm glad it happened.
Thank you, Jen. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So let me tell you a little bit about him. I'm not going to read his whole bio. You can grab that in the show notes below and we'll go from there. But while serving as Nevada's Attorney General, he successfully argued in a 9-0 case of Wharton versus Bochting before the Supreme Court of the United States today. I think you're probably going to have to tell us what that case is because those who are not attorneys don't know what that case is. Prior to serving as Nevada's Attorney General, he had a distinguished legal career representing individual and corporate clients on all matters relating to the growth and management of their businesses. And it's what you're doing today as well, is still helping people. He has served on numerous boards, both civic and corporate, and currently has been serving for the last 10 years as the chairman of Capriotti's Sandwich Shop, which I had never heard of until you were on our mastermind. So now I'm learning a little bit about that, and I'm sure our listeners want to hear about that too, about a rapidly growing 100 plus unit business or franchise ran by millennials, which happens to be something that you really are interested in. And we want to talk about that at length today. So I just can't wait to get in because there's so many topics I want to talk to you about. Okay. So I want to start with, you, how do you go from being an attorney that is working on really in the corporate business kind of world? And I mean, to me, it's very confining because we all know when we think attorneys, it's, square and it's in that square. But I don't see you that way at all, George. I see you as this person who's just so fluid. How did that happen? I mean, where was this tipping point or this apex that you were like, I just can't be in the confines like this and I need more out of life?
So that's an interesting question. First of all, I've had three main guiding passions throughout my life. They've been art, politics, and business. So these are the three things that always seem to have drawn me closer to them. When I was very young, my interest in politics formed when I was 6 years old. I was in the car with my mom. It came over the radio that JFK had been assassinated. My mom pulled the car to the side of the road and started crying. That became a lifelong fascination with politics. Went back to our little apartment, watched the news. I saw this outpouring of international grief and love and support for this fallen hero. And I was mesmerized. So I knew early on that I by the time I was 10, I knew that I wanted to be president. I was going to be president in the year 2000. I would be 42 years old. I would be 1 year younger than JFK. I mapped it all out by the time I was 12, and I began to follow that process.
Wow.
And then I had another epiphany moment when I went back to work in Washington, D.C. I was an intern for Senator Paul Laxalt. After serving as student body president at the university, he invited me back. And it was during ABSCAM. It was during the political corruption trials of the ABSCAM co-conspirators. And I was in the Russell Senate office building. Elevator doors opened up. In walked the ABSCAM co-conspirators with their wives. I take one look at their faces. And they are, essentially death walking. And I knew that I did not want to be one of them.
Right.
So that created another epiphany moment. So I thought, well, what do I need to do do what it is that I'd like to do and avoid the pitfalls that these men fell into. Right. And I thought, well, I need to get into business. I need to make money. I need to be able to sit across the table from a billionaire or somebody who's trying to influence me. And I need to be able to say, I don't need your money. And if I can do that, that's the time for me to go into politics. So I went off to law school. I worked for the San Diego office of one of the largest firms in the world. And I learned my trade and became proficient at what I was doing. The American lawyer referred to the associates at this firm as the Dobermans. So I was one of the Dobermans.
Wow. Yeah.
And I learned to be, a very resourceful and effective lawyer. And then I saw that Vegas was growing by leaps and bounds. I had a history here. I had gone to college here, I worked for Senator Laxalt. And so I decided to come back to Vegas and open up my own shop. And I did that. And I grew that, and it was very successful. And I started doing some real estate deals. I made quite a bit of money in real estate. And then I got essentially a knock at the door. I was at the Trinidad fight at the MGM, and in walks the managing partner of the state's largest law firm. And he says, "George, I've been thinking about you." And I said, "Really, Joe? What about?" And he said, well, the attorney general is resigning to become a federal judge, and the governor has empowered me to find his replacement, and I think you'd be great. And it took me back to when I was 6, and I thought this was destiny. This was my destiny. And it took me back to when I was 20, and I thought, you know what? I finally have enough money to say yes. And so I said yes, and I shut down my law practice. I gave it to my associate. And I, took a huge pay cut, and I became Nevada's 31st Attorney General. Yeah. And I loved the job. I loved the law, and I loved making decisions, and I loved the gravity of the position and arguing before the United States Supreme Court. I loved all of that, but I hated politics. I found out that politics was not for me. I found out that even though I had been a student of politics my whole life, and I knew that there was a level of dysfunction, I didn't understand the gravity of the dysfunction. Yeah. And my ego made me think that I could make a difference. And the truth was that I would have been Don Quixote jousting at windmills. And I would have been swimming in a very toxic pool. Right. And I just didn't want my life to be that way. So it wasn't, just a question of, having the skill set to do it and having the money to do it. It was also a question of, do I want to live this life? And it was very polarizing. I was not a polarizing, my views were not polarized views. I was not, far right or far left. I was a centrist. I was a socially liberal Republican, right? Which is sort of an oxymoron today, right? There are not a lot of, not a lot of Republicans that are pro-choice and believe in some reasonable gun control and, support the LGBTQ movement and, want to see criminal justice reform. So I have, views that conservatives would consider liberal, but I have views that liberals would consider conservative, right? Right. And so I just don't fit into a menu, where the Republican Party can give me a menu and say, this is what you believe, or the Democrats can give me a menu and say, this is what you need to support. I'm just not that kind of guy. I choose my issues one by one, and my candidates, individual by individual. And I make informed decisions about how I think about issues, right? Mm-hmm. So I believe very strongly in the Second Amendment, but I also believe in reasonable background checks, right? Right. I totally agree too. I personally, don't endorse the idea of military style assault weapons and high capacity magazines in the hands of civilians, right? Mm-hmm. And I know the law better than most people know the law. And I know that under the Heller decision authored by Scalia, who's was a very conservative jurist, that our rights under the Second Amendment are not unlimited, that we do indeed have an individual right to bear arms, but it is not an unlimited right. So, when you understand what the Constitution really says and what it really means and what its history really means, you don't fall into either camp that has these rigid belief systems like the Second Amendment is completely inviolate, or all guns are bad.
Right.
You just don't. So,
do you consider yourself to be a constitutionalist?
I am a constitutionalist.
Yeah, that's what I mean. As you're explaining it, that's sort of where my husband and I fall now these days. Is we just want to protect the Constitution.
Yeah,
that's really what it's about for us.
So do I. So do I. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But part of that is understanding what the Constitution really says.
Yeah.
And what it really means, right? Mm-hmm. So, under the Constitution, the Supreme Court defines what these terms mean, right? So, if the Heller decision, authored by Scalia and with concurring opinions from the other justices, defines the scope of the Second Amendment, then that's the scope. It's not what you think it is, or what I think it is, or what somebody else thinks it is. That's not the Constitution. The Constitution is, they tell us what it is, they interpret it, and then that's what it means.
Yeah, I know. And unfortunately, that's what we're seeing now is just, that change going on. But it gets me back. I thank you for explaining that, because it does help me understand, why your outlook on things is so broad. I mean, is so broad. The first time I met you, I was like, I don't understand the title. And, we all do that. We stereotype people based on titles, right? And I was going, the title isn't matching him. It's not matching him. And I couldn't and when, of course, we talked about your artwork behind you and all the things that you absolutely love. So thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing that. And I think that, has really brought you to where you are now. And this is something that now I imagine you're just eating up all the changes that are going on from a technology standpoint. So let's talk about that part. Well, before we do that, I want to talk about businesses, because I know you're a business strategist. So what is it that you help businesses strategize in doing? I mean, there's growth. I get it, but I get the sense there's a little more to just growth in what you are consulting.
Yeah. So I'm a, think of Napoleon on the hill, right? Mm-hmm. And then he's got his generals down on the field, right? Napoleon on the hill has a helicopter perspective of the battle, right? So he sees the entire terrain, right? When I was 12 years old, I read a book called Ogilvy on Advertising by David Ogilvy, who was considered the father of advertising. And David Ogilvy talked about this helicopter perspective. And this stuck with me, this idea of rising above and looking at the big picture, right? So for 30 years in advising clients, right, you'd come into me and you'd say, George, I'm having this problem with my business, right? I have a partner that, isn't carrying their weight, that is doing things that they shouldn't be doing. My industry is morphing and changing. My competitors are stealing my trade secrets, whatever it happened to be, right?
Right.
And I would have to rise above and say, and look at all the different angles, right? So I would try to understand your industry and understand your business, if you can believe it or not, better than you do, right? So I would do research. I would do research and I would read and I would look at your industry and I would do everything I can to learn about your industry. And then I would learn about you. And then I would learn about the people that are opposite you that you're having a problem with, right?
Right.
And I would look at it from all perspectives. Now, when you're on the ground in the middle of the problem, in the heat of battle, you're not necessarily going to be the person that has the objectivity to do that, to rise above the fray. And to look at all of those different issues, right? You may think you're in a dispute with a partner. You may think that you're in the right and they're in the wrong. And that's, you've arrived at that conclusion. You think you've thought it all out. And, you're firmly entrenched in that position, right? Well, I would require that you, switch positions and pretend you're the other person. And I'd ask you to tell me the story from their perspective, right? If you were arguing their position, what would you be saying? And I'd try to get that information out of you because I'd need to see what the other side is, right? So as a strategist, I'm a problem solver, right? So essentially that's what I've been, right? So mostly people have come to me with problems and I've found solutions to their problems, right? Now, it doesn't always have to be a problem. It could be you're coming to me and you're saying, I want to grow my business, right? I would look at more than just growing your business. I would look at the issue of where is your industry going? Where is your business going?
The long haul.
What happens when we do grow your business? Do you have the infrastructure to support that? Is this really the direction that you want to be moving in? You know, you have this plan of growing your business in this direction. Is that really the optimal direction? Is there another direction that you're not thinking about that might be more lucrative, that might be more sustainable, that might be more consistent with emerging trends in your industry? So, you know, if you come into me and say, I want to grow my business, I'm not just going to, develop a plan how you can manufacture more widgets or close more deals. I'm going to develop a comprehensive plan that really allows you to be successful, to be your best self, and for your business to be its best self, and for you to grow in a way that is sustainable, in a way that will stand the test of time, in a way that looks out over the horizon over the next 5 and 10 years and positions you for what's going to happen then, not just today. That's what I do. That's as an overall strategist, I've been doing that for 30 years. And so when you do something for tens of thousands of hours, I don't care if it's golfing or playing tennis or singing or whatever it is, when you do something for tens of thousands of hours, and I've probably put in 50,000 billable hours, right, in solving complex problems and developing strategies over the years. And when you do that, when you invest that much time, you develop a certain proficiency, right? So, and one of the other things that happens when you do this in all these different industries, right? When the problems are constantly changing day by day, industry by industry, individual by individual, you become what they call a polymath. You become someone who is a very broad learner, right? As opposed to a deep learner. So I'm not a deep learner. So if you put me in a room with, Ray Kurzweil, who understands artificial intelligence, way, way beyond what I understand about artificial intelligence, he would be the guy to talk to about artificial intelligence. I wouldn't, right? But I might know more than you do, or I might know more than the average person does, but I won't know more than a deep learner, right?
Yeah, it reminds me of fiduciary, right? A fiduciary who is managing, who doesn't know about brokerage firms, stocks, for example, doesn't know about options trading, doesn't know about every mutual fund, but as a fiduciary provides that holistic outlook that says, we might want to pull back in this area and move forward in that area, go talk to the expert in that area. Yeah, and I certainly understand that. I love that you talked about emerging trends because that really, and by the way, I just want to say something too. You had said something on our mastermind is just stop limiting your business growth, right? And that really hit home with me. And I wrote it down, and I still have it written down because it's a very simple phrase. Of course, I don't want to limit myself, but I think that we do tend to limit ourselves by saying, I just want to grow to here, not that I want to grow vertically and horizontally, right, in a complete spectrum. And for whatever reason, that hit me very well, because I do think that we think very linear when it comes to growth, right? So instead of the shotgun approach.
Yeah. So you talked about Capriati. So you mentioned Capriati, right? So I've been chairman of the board of the company for the last 12 years, and I have 2 young millennials that run the day-to-day operations. My partners could, tell you the cost of pickles, right? And I couldn't, right? I don't know anything about it, right? And what they do is they I've provided mentorship and guidance to them over the years. But they run the business. I don't run the business. I don't have an office in the business, right? They come to me when they have problems that they need solved, right? Or they're entering into big deals, big transactions that they need help in negotiating, right? So these are the types of ways that I add value. But let me tell you what Capriati's has done. So first of all, we're one of the fastest growing QSRs in the United States. We acquired
Which stands for
quick service restaurants.
There we go. Thank you.
So we acquired the company 12 years ago, and we're about 40 stores. We have 120 stores that are open and operating profitably today, but we also have about 150 and climbing stores in the pipeline. By the end of the year, we expect to have 400 in the pipeline. Okay, so 150 in the pipeline that have signed franchise agreements, paid non-refundable deposits, and that will be opening, right? We've moved our franchise inquiries from 1 a day to 10 a day.
Wow.
We during the pandemic, when most restaurants were devastated, many sit-down restaurants closed.
Right, they did.
High-end restaurants, something like 70 to 80% of the high-end restaurants closed and went out of business. The other sit-down restaurants were hit by as much as 40 or 50% losing money or closing. And the quick service restaurants lost sales of about 30%, right? We had double-digit revenue increases during 2020, during COVID, double-digit revenue increases. Same store sales increased by double digits. We also acquired a new company called Wing Zone, which has 66 stores, which we acquired during the pandemic, right? So growth is good. Growth is, you want growth.
What do you contribute? Yeah, I was going to say, what do you contribute that growth to? I mean, because I know you're going to talk about something called ghost restaurants, right?
Ghost kitchens.
Yeah,
ghost kitchens. Yeah. So that's another area that we are pioneers in. So we were looking at ghost kitchens several years ago, before most anybody was into the field. And ghost kitchens are essentially someone takes out a warehouse, they buy a warehouse or they lease a warehouse, and they create kitchens, multiple kitchens, 50 kitchens, 100 kitchens in this warehouse, this large warehouse. And then they lease out those kitchens to restaurateurs, right? So today I have a footprint on my QSR, on my typical Capriati's, of about 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. In a ghost kitchen, my footprint might be only 200 square feet, right? In a normal restaurant, I might have 15 employees on a rotation. In a ghost kitchen, I might have 2 or 3 employees, right? So the costs of operation are radically different, right? In the restaurant business, you have your rent, you have your labor, and you have your food costs. These are your 3 primary costs. In a ghost kitchen, I reduce my rent and I reduce my labor. I reduce 2 of my 3 costs dramatically, right? So that makes me that much more profitable. Now today, most of our customers are ordering online. They're either ordering online through us, or they're ordering through Uber Eats or Grubhub or DoorDash or Postmates or whatever their favorite app is. Yeah. They go on that app, they order, and then the driver comes and picks up the food and then delivers it to the consumer. It doesn't matter if the driver is driving up to a 2,000 square foot QSR restaurant, or they're driving up to a 200 square foot kitchen inside of a ghost kitchen industrial building, right? Doesn't matter. The customer is getting the same product, right? So if I can decrease my costs, then I can pass those savings on to the customer, and the customer gets a better value proposition, and they're getting the same product. As long as they don't need to eat inside and sit down, then the ghost kitchen option is the better option. So we now offer franchises to people who want to open up a franchise. You can become a franchisee of Capriati's by either opening up a QSR 1,500 to 2,000 square foot inline retail shop, or you can open up a 200 square foot ghost kitchen for a fraction of the price, right? And we offer both models. Some people, want one or the other, and some people do both.
Yeah, I imagine they would want to do both. Yeah. Yeah, just
Yeah.
and that has come out sort of as a result of the pandemic, right? I know it was around for a while, but it was sort of coming out as a result of the pandemic. I remember you saying something about the fact that there, in some of these ghost kitchens, there's not even a human being; that there are robots that are now, dunking chicken or whatever they're doing, and preparing the food depending on the type of food that there is. Yeah.
Yeah. So for Wing Zone, we've recently acquired this company called Wing Zone. And on the back end in the kitchen, we are in discussions with robotics companies about the possibility of creating robots. They already exist, but putting them in our shops so that the robot would essentially grab the frozen chicken wings. They would drop them in the deep fryer. Yeah. They would pull them out and drop them on paper towels, right? And then they would take them and put them in a sauce bowl, and they would mix them in the sauce, and then they would take them out of the sauce and put them in a box, and then they would close the box and put it on a conveyor belt, and it would go out to the front where it would be served to the customer.
Or Uber Eats would pick it up. Yeah. Yeah.
This can all be automated today.
Yeah. Well, of course it can, because we know, what robotics can do in making, in building cars and things like that. I mean, anything. If you ever watch how it's made, that the robotics can do so much.
Yeah. The Tesla factory in Fremont, California, 160 robots, very little human involvement required.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so let's go back to the question. So what do you think, not think, but to what do you owe the fact that you have grown double when everyone else is shrinking? What about the emerging trends and, new things that are coming along that you talk about? I won't say the name yet, but the things that are coming along, what do you think it is that allowed for you all to grow so substantially during this time?
The ability to pivot and adapt to changing circumstances more rapidly and efficiently than others. And so we saw the minute we saw this coming, our entire corporate staff immediately went virtual. So we were all working in an office, over 100 people working in an office. We all went home. We all began working from home, right? We shifted our marketing from marketing our existing retail locations to instead putting our advertising dollars online into marketing, online purchasing, and online ordering. So we increased the number of customers that were availing themselves of.
While everyone else was still setting it up or fighting the system.
Yeah. While everyone else was basically, trying to lobby to open up their stores, right?
Yeah.
We went digital.
Yeah.
We went digital.
That's, it's so simple, but that's exactly what you talk about all the time, is with the emerging trends and with the things that you talk about in your new book. In your new book as well. So let's go ahead and segue over to the new book, which is The Millennial Samurai.
Yep.
And I found it interesting thank you for sharing it. I found it interesting as I was browsing through it, because you were, and I know that you've got something you want to share with everybody, but as I was browsing through it, it's interesting that you called it The Millennial Samurai, because I actually was saying it's really I don't even know what else to call it, but it's so much more than millennial. It is you and I, we're both baby boomers, in this baby boomer era, adapting to, and not just to millennials, we need to be adapting to Gen Z, right?
Yes.
Gen Z, and now the alpha generation, right? Now we have alpha.
You got it. So it's not about millennials. The reason it's called Millennial Samurai is that this whole new foray of mine into writing and into speaking was inspired by my daughter, who is a millennial. And so I wanted to prepare her for the future, right? And my nephew, my oldest nephew, I have a number of nephews and nieces, but my oldest nephew is also a millennial. And so they were the original inspiration. And then the other thing is that it occurred to me that as, whatever we think, millennials have been given a bad name, a bad rap, where essentially they've been characterized wrongly or rightly. They've been characterized as entitled and delusional and not embracing the baby boomer generation's values. I realized in looking at this problem that we're facing as a global community of the tech, both a problem and an opportunity, looking at the change that's coming through technology, the technological revolution, which I see as a tsunami of technological change. The millennial generation, regardless of what we think of them, they will be at the tip of the generational spear as humanity encounters this tsunami, right? You and I will be older, right? I'm 60. I don't know how old you are. I'm sure you're nowhere near what I am, but I'm 62 years old. I'm going to be getting
I was born 2 days after Kennedy was shot because my mother was so distraught because she worked for the Secretary of State under Kennedy.
Okay.
So that's when I was born, 2 days after he was shot. Yeah.
Wow. So regardless of what, we all think of millennials, they are at an age where as humanity encounters this tide of change, they will be the first major generation at the tip of the spear to essentially tackle these problems, right? I will be older and I will be more of a liability than an asset, right? I'll be a drain on the system as I get older, right? And I'm not going to solve the world's problems. Right. The people that are going to have to solve the world's problems are going to be first the millennial generation, the 85 million of them, then the Gen Zs along with them, then the alphas, right? This is the tidal wave's going to hit them and they're going to have to deal with it, right? Yeah. So that's why it's Millennial Samurai. And I feel that my role, our role, the baby boomer generation, is to do everything that we can to empower this generation, right? To enable them to pass down as a legacy what it is that we have learned, right? What is it that we know that they don't yet know that we can share with them so that they become more formidable and more resilient and more adaptive and better at dealing with these problems? Because
quickly.
Quickly. Because the way in which they handle these issues is going to affect you and me, right? And so we have to hope and try to encourage them to handle them effectively and appropriately, right? And not just the way we see it, but the way they see it, because they're going to inherit that world and they're going to live in that world. And all these subsequent generations are going to inherit and live in that world. So how they see the world and how they want the world is very important. But it's important for all of us that they make good decisions, right? So how can we empower them and educate them to make good decisions, right? As we see it, give them whatever information we have.
Yeah. And I mean, right now we have 5 generations in the workforce at the same time. And no time in history have we ever had 5 generations at one time. And it's imperative that we all understand each other. Not that, and I love that you're saying, that as baby boomers, we need to help them. And I do agree with that. But I also think as millennials, they need to help us. They need to help us for those, and I consider myself to be very techie. I mean, heck, I've been doing the podcast. I'm one of the veterans in podcasting, right? Over 6.5 years, I've been doing this. So I consider myself to be very techie. But I think that there's many of baby boomers and many Gen Xers that are not techie at all. And the millennials need to look in the rearview mirror and bring us along just as much as we need to push them forward, right? Because I know this was the push generation too, that that Gen Xers were pushing their kids out. They were pushing them constantly. And, but I do agree with you. Both of my kids are millennials. Both are very, very successful. My son is an Inc. 500 business owner. He owns a business that debuted at 234 in Inc. 500. So these guys, and so I don't look at millennials as bad because my kids are great. They're great. Yeah.
Sounds like
every generation has them. Every generation has them.
It sounds like you've got some millennial samurais.
Yes. Oh, I totally do. Yeah, I absolutely do. And we're creating that arrow right now for my daughter. She's already got it, but she's making a shift in what she's doing for a living, very similar to what she's doing now, but it's enough of a shift that we're starting to help her build and make that sword, so she can be the spear of it, so that we can take a step back in one of our businesses.
Right.
And, and I think it's great what's going on, because this is, I think it started last year. It's funny how the 21st century came along. And we're 20 years into the 21st century, and we're just now realizing that there's this thing called leadership, right? And what it looks like, what it really looks like, it's collaborative, it's team oriented, it's community oriented.
Yes.
It is a new way of working, where we have freedoms that we didn't have before, but yet having more productivity and more efficiency as a result of it. And I know that's, as I was browsing through the digital version, I can't wait to get the real version so I can really dig in. The digital version of your book, is that these opportunities are now ahead of us, and we need to take advantage of them as quickly as we possibly can. So that's why you want to get it in the hands of how many people?
I'd like to, I'm giving away the digital version for free.
Yep.
And I'd like to get 1 million people to download the free digital version.
Yeah.
That's my goal.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And, to learn about it. And I know that the minute you gave me what that was, and we'll make sure the link is here in the show notes, but to do it, that I sent it off to my kids to read as well, because I wanted them to read it. I have to read to my husband. He can read. He just is not a reader. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
He likes reading his car magazines. That's what he likes reading. So I've been kind of debriefing him on everything that I've been reading in it. And, it's just an exciting time. So if someone, if someone who's listening to this podcast is a millennial, what are you telling them versus, and I'm going to go the extreme and say the baby boomer, rather than the silent generation of the builders, just to go to those two extremes, because I think that's where the biggest spread is.
The message isn't really different. As you pointed out earlier, the book is not simply for millennials.
Right.
It's titled Millennial Samurai because they will be at the tip of the generational spear. Mm-hmm. But it has equal application to baby boomers. And it's essentially, think of it like this. If I were to drop you off in the middle of the Amazon rainforest and I were going to give you a duffel bag, we can think of certain things that we would both want in that duffel bag, right? You might want water. You might want a compass. You might want an instrument that allows you to light fire. You might want something to cut with, right? So there are some certain things that you would put in that duffel bag, right? What I've done is I've tried to think of all the things that a human being needs to know. And I haven't covered everything, right? I've only covered 182 chapters, right? They're 1 to 3 pages each. They're very easy to read. They're very quick for the short attention span reader, right? Even people millennials or people that, don't like to read.
That's true. They don't read. Yeah. Only 3% do, right?
Yeah. Your husband might love this book because he can read 1 or 2 or 3 pages like a magazine. I personally prefer reading magazines as well, right? So, or articles, right? I enjoy reading articles.
Yeah, he does
or papers that people have written, to, do a lot of my research as opposed to a book, because often a book is repetitive, right? A book on positive thinking, for example, might take 200 pages to tell you what they could have told you in 2 pages, right? So what Millennial Samurai is doing is I've taken each of these subjects: character, courage, commitment, compassion, and issues that are facing us today: global warming, racism, incarceration, criminal justice reform, all of these issues. Issues that will face us in the future: artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, 3D printing, the Internet of Things, cloud computing, longevity, escape velocity, asteroid mining. I've taken all of these topics and I've done the research so that you don't have to. I've done the exhaustive reading so that you don't have to. And I've condensed what I've learned into short, bite-sized chapters that you can easily digest, that will not take up much of your time, and that you will learn a tremendous amount of new information that's extremely relevant to the next 30 years that you're going to live in, or that your children are going to live in, right? So now you're going to get what I have, which is a broad base of knowledge, a broad familiarity with all of these different issues, right? And the way that can empower you, there are so many ways that can empower you that it's incredible. I mean, first of all, as you're trying to solve a problem, you can draw from all these different disciplines and all these different things that you've learned, and you can apply them to any given problem in many cases. You're also going to be aware of all of these changes that are going to occur and how those changes are likely to affect your industry or your life, right? Or your relationships or your religion or your community, right? So, we are living, what's important for people to know is that we are living in the most extraordinary period in human history. And let me tell you why I say that, okay? Stephen Hawking, before he died in 2014, told us that the singularity, the moment in time when machine intelligence eclipses human intelligence, will be the greatest event in human history. Greater than fire, greater than the wheel, greater than space travel, the internet, anything that we have ever conceived or are even capable of conceiving with our limited intellectual capacity, okay? So this is coming, right? Now, Ray Kurzweil, who is the head of artificial intelligence for Google, who Bill Gates says knows more about artificial intelligence than anyone he knows, right? Ray Kurzweil tells us that this singularity could happen as early as 2029. That's what, 9 years away?
Right around the corner.
Away, right? Right around the corner. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, so the greatest event in human history happening in less than a decade. Okay. So first of all, that's pretty powerful stuff in and of itself, right? Yeah. But then Kurzweil goes on. I mean, we've never had an occurrence like that. That's like a meteor hitting. Okay. Then we've got Kurzweil saying that's not the end of it. That by the 2040s, which is 20 to 30 years away, artificial intelligence will not be our equal. It will be a billion with a B, a billion times more capable than human intelligence. Now, we lack the intellectual capacity to even imagine what an intelligence that is a billion times our own even means, right?
Absolutely.
But this is all coming in our lifetime and definitely in your children's lifetime, right? So when you have a tsunami, you look around today and you see a lot of change, a lot of rapid and radical change that's occurring based on our lives, based on the last 50, 60 years, that I've been around. I have not seen this kind of level of change that has been occurring over the last several years, okay? Mm-hmm. Political change in particular, social change, right? Now, when a tsunami comes, the first thing that happens is you see the water level rise on the beach, right? So you start to see water on the floor, right? You don't see the big wave.
Not
you don't
yet.
see the tsunami. You just see water on the floor, right? What we're seeing today, in my view, is the water on the floor, okay? And it's being brought about by the first wave of the technological tsunami, which is our cell phone and social media, right? So this cell phone has 100,000 times the computing power that NASA had 50 years ago in 1969, when they put a man on the moon. They needed a room full of computers. Now, if I went back in the past and traveled back 50 years, and I walked into that room of scientists with this phone, and I said, hey guys, you know, in 50 years, everyone is going to have one of these, and it's going to have 100,000 times the computing power that you have in this room, and every individual will have one in their back pocket or their purse, they would think I had lost my mind, right?
Right.
Stuart Brand, futurist Stuart Brand says, if someone is talking about the future and it doesn't sound like science fiction, they don't know what they're talking about, right? The future is science fiction, right? It is very much going to be like science fiction. So you can see that just by looking at what would have happened if I went back with the phone 50 years ago. They would have thought I was crazy, right? So when I'm telling you that artificial intelligence will be 1 billion times, or when Ray Kurzweil is telling you that, and it doesn't matter if it's 1 billion times, it could be 1,000 times, it could be 1,000,000 times, it could be double what human intelligence is. Even double would be a huge, massive development, right? So we know that there are going to be these massive changes, right? So what do we need to know to be able to take advantage of these opportunities, not run from them, not be afraid of them, not be frightened by the change, but embrace the change, run towards the change, and take advantage of the change to live an extraordinary life? What do we need to know to do that? That's what I've tried to put in this book.
In the book,
okay?
yeah.
That's why it's your duffel bag.
Right.
Okay?
Now I feel, and I hear what you're saying about, you know, the first wave coming through and it's coming on the shore and everything, because we also know that everything gets sucked out before the tsunami comes, right? You know, voice technology is something that I'm hearing a lot about. I just interviewed someone on my podcast a couple of weeks ago about voice technology and how powerful this is becoming, you know, that we can talk to Miss Siri, and you have to say that when you're in a room with these things nowadays, because they'll respond to you, right? Miss Alexa, and they, when you're talking to them, that now doctors are going to be able to tell, or the artificial intelligence is going to be able to tell that when you say the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dogs, they're going to be able to tell you where you're ailing, that you have a heart condition, that you have a liver condition, and all this technology is already here. It's here. It's being tested. So tell us. So I know that's actually happening and creating this big pool that's happening on the shoreline. What is the suck out? What does that look like? Because there is that happens, and then the wave comes in. So what do you see as being that? Is it our lack of adaptability?
What do I see as the negative, or what do I see as the disruption?
Yeah, it's the part that pulls back right before the tsunami comes.
Okay, so first of all, there's going to be a lot of economic disruption, right? In employment in particular, which is why people like Andrew Yang talk about a universal basic income, right? Because there are going to be millions of people who are unemployed, right? So think about it. First of all, McKinsey & Companies tells you that, McKinsey Consulting tells you that 47% of the global employment, the jobs that currently exist, are susceptible to automation based on existing technology. Just based on existing
what we already have. So they're that firm up in New York, right? Because I know I've seen the guy talk several times, and it's almost scary. It's scary. I'm not going to say it's scary.
Yeah. So the number one job for an American male is truck driver today. Those jobs are gone. There are 3 million truck drivers. Chrysler Dahmer was doing cross-country trips in driverless semis with just a passenger sitting in the car, in the cab. They've been doing that for several years. So those jobs eventually are going to disappear. Uber drivers. Right now, today, there are 3.9 million of them. Next year, there may be, 5 million of them. And those jobs, once they have driverless vehicles that are truly driverless, those jobs are gone. Clerical worker, the number one job for an American woman is clerical worker. Those jobs will be gone. The franchise food worker, 8 million of them. Eventually, most of those jobs will be automated. Anything, I guess, business economic imperative is that you want to reduce costs and increase profitability. And so anything that can be automated eventually will be automated. Now, what some people don't realize is that this goes much deeper than drivers, right? Real estate agents, title companies. These jobs can be automated.
Right,
Lawyers can be automated.
Lawyers. Yeah.
Journalists. The Amazon owns the Washington Post, and the Washington Post has an algorithm. And in 2016, during the 2016 election, they used that algorithm to author 500 articles. All the editor had to do is type in a 1-sentence instruction. Give me a 750 word article that says, Donald Trump is, a horrible person, right? And or Hillary Clinton is a horrible person, right? And the computer would generate a brilliantly written, exactly 750 words.
Grammar correct, right? Grammar,
everything perfect, right?
Yeah, so pulling from news feeds.
Yeah, so they ran 500 of these articles during the 2016 election, written by a computer. They received 500,000 likes. No one knew that they were written by a computer. God knows how many they've written since 2016 that have been written by a computer, right? And they are licensing that technology to other newspapers around the country. So, journalists' jobs are threatened, lawyers' jobs are threatened. All these different professions, right, are threatened. And so we're either going to experience massive economic disruption and unemployment, for which we're going to have to pivot and adapt in some way, right? And some people argue that, but this new technology will also create millions of new jobs. And it will. The question is, how will we train people for these new jobs that will be created, right? Because at the turn of the 20th century, in the early 1900s, we created the public education system for the Industrial Revolution. We were moving from an agrarian society to an industrial society. Right. So we created the public education system to teach people to get off the farm and to learn how to operate a machine, right? Well, today we are moving from the Industrial Revolution to the technological revolution, and the technological revolution will dwarf the Industrial Revolution, but I don't see a new educational system for the technological revolution. I see us continuing to try to use the old public education system that was created for the Industrial Revolution, and that won't work, right?
Right. And that's why you're seeing, it'll be interesting to see what happens with universities.
Yeah.
In the form that they are now, in the experience.
I don't think they should exist in the form that they are now.
Yeah, I don't think they will. I think the biggest concern, however, is the loneliness and the emotional, because we have more lonely, in the Gen Z and the alphas will be the loneliest because they just don't have that camaraderie and that, and that's, I think, what I'm most concerned about is.
Yeah. It's an issue. It's a big issue.
Well, and you even look at the physique of younger generations over our generation and older. The physique has changed. I've noticed that my grandkids are not like my kids were at all. They're like these little avatars walking around. It's just amazing, what is happening. Well, and I think that's important to recognize is that suck out is going to be all the loss. And so preparing for that as an individual preparing for that. I know that, there's been some new changes with Mac and Microsoft Outlook and the look that just came out recently, of how it looks over the last, month. And we're moving more towards lack of typing. I found that it's funny you say that because, I have this is my keyboard. It's
Right.
not attached. It's not right in front of me all the time. I move it around because I find that I don't have the need for it as much as I used to.
Yeah.
And I've really experienced that in the last 6 months or so that I can just do a lot of more voice technology for almost anything I want to do. And that's coming as well. And so we won't be learning how to type like we used to because we won't need to.
I worry that we won't be remembering how to talk.
I'm worried. Yeah, because we talk in acronyms, right? Or we talk in.
Well, I mean, my daughter has a house. She has her own house, and she's got housemates, right? And some of those housemates stay in their rooms, and they're on their computer all day, and they're texting. They're not talking. They're not using their phones to speak. They're texting, and then when they do come out of the room, they don't have eye contact.
Correct.
They don't. Their ability to converse is beginning to atrophy, right? And so the more you do that, and there's this transition that is occurring between the real world that you and I grew up in and played in and did sports in and learned in, right? To the digital world, right? A digital environment. Right. And if you think about it, as human beings, we all have brains and we all have an emotional system, right? And so our emotional system can be triggered. Our dopamine releases, right? Slot machines in Las Vegas triggered dopamine releases, right? Video games triggered dopamine releases, right? Participating in digital worlds and digital fantasies may make you feel good, right? And so if you have a life in the real world that doesn't make you feel good, and then you go to the digital world and that life gives you the emotional sustenance that you need, right? Where are you going to spend your time?
Yeah, it's completely avatar, right? I mean, think about it. If you think about the movie.
You're going to have, today you have a choice. Yeah. You have a choice to live in the real world and you have a choice to live in the digital world. And some people are finding the digital world to be more attractive, and especially young people, because their real world experience has become so unattractive, right? 50% of them graduate from college and can't find a job that requires a college degree. Yeah. Many of them are facing hopelessness and despair because they live in communities where they don't feel there's a way out, right? And they don't have hopefulness and
so suicide rates are up, emotional.
Exactly. So this shows a movement. This shows a movement towards a digital kind of experience. And also people like, you look at the NFT space, which I'm recently getting into because I'm an artist. Yeah. And I love to create. Mm-hmm. And so this is a very interesting space for me, right? To create these NFTs. And when you look at that space, there are people like Metakoven, right? Who bought the Beeple at Christie's for $69 million, a digital work of art that he paid $69 million for. Right. He's creating a metaverse. He's creating a world in the digital environment that you can go into, and it will have these museums that will feature this digital art, right? And it will have other things. It will have raves where your avatar can dance with other avatars, or, God knows what it will eventually have, right? But it will create a digital experience. And if people are spending 8 hours on their phone or their laptop today, right? They may be spending more time when you have these virtual experiences, right? So then you've got augmented reality, you've got virtual reality, you've got experiential reality, and all of these things. Millennials prize experience over everything else.
Everything else, right? And education. Yeah. Experience and having the education to know, be in the know.
Yeah.
Be in the know for it.
Yeah,
and I mean, even our coins, right? We look at all of the coins and, I was telling you about my son, he's actually creating his own crypto inside of his company. He's creating his own crypto that people will trade within his company. And, just because not Coinbase, but Bitcoin is there and a few others doesn't mean more aren't going to be coming in. And so we're going to have this different type of money. And look what happened to our actual coins, right? There's coin shortage everywhere. Yeah. Because of COVID.
Yeah.
It's
5,000 ICOs, initial coin offerings.
Yeah.
So, it's not just Bitcoin.
It's not. There's tons of
thousands of these.
Yeah. Thousands of out there. And he has his own coming out too. And I think it's going to be called, well, his company is Option Alpha, but it's like, I think he's calling it, option coins or something. Option.
I love it.
Yeah. But he's doing the same.
How old is he?
I'm sorry?
How old is your son?
34.
34.
Yep. Has a multi-million-dollar company. Yep. Being looked at to be sold. He's trying to position it for sale to the tune of around 250 million. He has one letter of intent that came and he passed up on it because he wasn't quite ready to sell because he knew he could triple it.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. Yeah, I know.
I'd actually love to talk to him, learn more about what he's doing.
Oh yeah, we'll connect you. We will definitely connect you because he's having such a great time putting this together, and it's tremendous. And I would imagine
he's probably doing something with NFTs too.
I think he's starting with that. I know I was talking to him about that this weekend, and I think he's starting to look in that direction if he's not already done it. I know he's got a couple million in Bitcoin, so he was in on it early.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He was in on it early, but I'm sure he's already thinking that, if not already way past what I think.
Yeah, that's what you want to do. You need to be in the information flow. Yeah. Right. So
I feel like I'm in the river. I'm not running the boat. I'm in the boat. Right.
As long as you're in the flow, as long as you are receiving the information that is relevant, then you're in the right place. So, think about it for a minute. In 1998, there was ICANN and there were domain names, right? And if you were in the information,
part of that, I was part of the .coms. Yeah.
Okay. So if you were in that flow in 1998, then you were buying up .com names, right? And you were profiting from that. Mm-hmm. If you were in the information flow in 2010, when Bitcoin was 8 cents a piece, you were buying them up, right? So today that new activity is NFTs, and so I missed the 1998 .com craze. I started buying certain domains in probably 2000, and by then most of them were gone.
Right?
I wasn't paying attention in 2010 when Bitcoin was 8 cents, and I wasn't buying it, right? But I am very much in the beginning of the NFT space. So I actually have a fund, and awesome. I'm actually going to be minting, designing and minting, working with artists from all over the world, designing and minting NFTs. And we're at the inception of that new opportunity. Now there will be ups and downs, right?
Of course. But it's still going to go up in the long run because we're not going backwards. It was funny. I was talking to somebody, an uncle or something. He's in his 80s, and I've got lots of family. And he was saying, well, the internet's just a flash in the pan, and that's why I'm not going to do it. And
yeah, right.
Right. I said, oh, Uncle Darce, no, it's not a flash in the pan. It's here to stay. And he goes, yeah, but it won't matter because I'm not going to be around that much longer. And I'm like, that's fine. But it is harder and harder because I have to make a phone call to him in order to communicate with him. Right. And I would like to share pictures of what I'm doing with my family and his great grandnieces and things like that. But are great grandnieces and nephews, but it's just much harder to communicate with him. And I have to go out of my way to make sure I call him, and that's okay. And so there's going to be some little danglers there. But what I love about this and part of this podcast is breaking through glass ceilings, right? Is that we are breaking through multitudes of glass ceilings right now. And this is where you want to be. This is where you want to be. So I love that you're doing the charge for it. And I know that you're going to be talking about even more of these topics when I get a chance to see you here in a couple of months out in San Diego. But I would say, if you want to give away 100 or 1 million of these ebooks, what is the best way for someone to get 100 of the ebooks or a million of the ebooks? And not that they're going to go get a million, but how they can start sharing it. Yeah.
Right.
I'm having a hard time with my numbers all of a sudden.
Yeah. So they would go on millennialsamurai.com, millennialsamurai.com, and they would download the digital ebook. And it's free. It's 444 pages, but it's very easy to read. You don't have to read the whole thing. You can pick and choose the chapters that you want to focus on and that you want to read. You can read it over time. You don't have to start at the beginning and move to the end. You could start at the end, move to the beginning. It's all broken down into these short, bite-sized chapters that are only 1 to 3 pages each. They're very, very easy to read. And you will learn, I guarantee, that virtually half the book will tell you things that you do not know today. And how do I know that? Because when I was writing it, the things that I put in the book were things that amazed me and that I did not know at the time that I wrote it in 2019.
Yeah.
So imagine
how much more is in there. You'll have to do another edition as things start changing, because I'm sure NFTs aren't even in there.
They're not in there. And it says on the cover right here, book 1. Book 1.
Yeah. You knew this is coming. You were ready for that. Yeah. You were ready for it to come. Oh, that's so awesome. Well, George, it has been so fun having you here, just hearing all of the things that you're just, further downstream, but I'm catching up. I'm in a boat behind you. Behind you, catching up with you. But, it's so
your son's boat has a motor.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And I'm just hanging on to that one, man. I'm hanging on to that one. So, but I thank you so much for coming here, and for everyone, please go and check, at his website. And we have all of the links below. You can friend him and find out what he's going to be talking about on LinkedIn and Instagram and social media, so that you can see where he's heading and where he's at, where you can catch him to speak. And most importantly is, if you're hearing this and you're with a major institution of some type, right? Some major institution, major association, George is also a speaker. So get him to come and inspire people about what the changes are to come, so that you can be the straw that stirs your business and stirs your industry in this whole big global economy. So take him up on his offer to come and speak at your events as well.
Yes, I would love to speak at anyone's event, and can also do breakout group sessions with your executives or with your attendees, question and answers. There's a lot to learn about what's going to happen, and it's really about being in the information flow and understanding what's happening so that you can take advantage of it.
Yeah, it's almost like you should coin it IF instead of AI. It's information flow, right? It's the information flow that's happening. And who ever thought at the beginning of this recording, if you stayed to the end, and hopefully you have because you were so excited about everything, that talking to an attorney would end up in where we're at right now and talking about what's going on. And now you understand why I brought George on to share his story and his ideas and thoughts with all of us. So thank you again, George, for being with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you, everyone, for listening in. I appreciate that you take time from your day. Please do us a favor and scroll down on your iPhone and give us a great 5-star review, 5-star rating, and then write us a great little review down there. We'd love to hear what you loved about this particular episode, and we'll catch you next time.
You've been listening to Success to Significance with Jen du Plessis, the #1 podcast for people wanting to give more value and make an impact. Loved this episode? Be sure to subscribe right now at www.jenduplessis.com/S2S for more stories, strategies, and thoughts to help you gain significance and success. And if you like what we're doing, don't forget to give us a rating and review so we can continue to bring you the best content possible. Join us next week for another breakthrough episode. Thank you for listening.